The Dallas Mavericks trade for former Rocket center Christian Wood. Is he the center the Mavericks need when Nico Harrison said they wanted to get an upgrade at center? We'll talk about that and what it means for the Dallas Mavericks ceiling. Did it change? Talk about all that and more on today's Locked On Mavs.
I'm Luka Doncic and this is Locked On Mavericks podcast.
The Dallas Mavericks are NBA champions. Bang! Bang! It's good!
And the Mavericks have won the game!
If you don't believe, you shouldn't be here.
And welcome. You are locked on to the Dallas Mavericks. My name is Nick Angstadt, media member and NBA channel manager for the Locked On Podcast Network. Thanks for making Locked On Mavs your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube, where the best way to help us grow the show is to comment your thoughts about the Christian Wood trade below. Let us know. What do you think about the Christian Wood trade? And guess what? I'm letting it ride. Letting it ride. When else can you let it ride during the offseason except for on a trade, right? Today's episode is brought to you by Arcade 1Up. Locked On is partnering with Arcade 1Up to give away 3 free NBA Jam Shaq machines. Stay tuned later in the show to learn how to enter. And joining me, as always, my co-host, writer, and contributor at Mavs.com, the Wood Wagon, the One More Thing King. What you got for me, Isaac Harris?
Mavs make a trade, baby.
Let's go.
It's always fun. It's always like that heart drop moment whenever you see a Shams, a Woj, a Stein.
Dallas Mavericks enter talks with, or have agreed in principle to, oh my God, what is it?
Well, it's like, you see a trade and you see Dallas Mavericks and you're like, oh, what just happened? And yeah, man, here's my just initial thoughts off the top. Did Boban have to be in it?
Don't even do this to my heart right now.
sorry.
Go breaking my heart.
We'll talk about Boban, but realistically, here's the thing. You add Christian Wood by not giving up a rotation player from the playoff run that you just went on, and by not giving up a future first round pick, and by not having to hurt your salary cap in the future. But all those 3 things, you added a starting center that's better than the centers that you have, then that's a win right there.
It's a win. It's
however you feel about Christian Wood, it's a win.
It's a win in that perspective, in an asset management perspective, because we've been talking about these 26 picks. We just had Rafael Barlow on yesterday to talk about the guys who are going to be available there, and we're like, what about Kamagate? What about these guys? These guys are all theoretical. Like, how many players at the 26th pick make it and are as good as Christian Wood, right? They wish that they could be as good as Christian Wood is right now. And so if you have the opportunity, now we'll go through all the positives and negatives about this trade, and there are some things that I'm concerned about, but if you can get a guy like that and play right now, and this team is kind of ready to go right now, then you do it and take the risk.
That's the thing. It's like, it basically comes down to 26 for Christian Wood, because we love Boban, but Boban, Sterling Brown, Trey Burke, Marquise Chris, they weren't in the rotation. They're not playing. They probably weren't going to be on the roster anyway, because Dallas is going to try to ship them off somewhere, put them in a deal somewhere else. So it's like you took 4 players who don't play for your team and turn them into Christian Wood, another expiring. It's not like, that's another thing. It's not like Christian Wood is making, $25 million a year for the next 4 years. He's an expiring too. So it basically comes down to, you're giving up the 26th overall pick for the expiring contract of Christian Wood. And yeah, I'm sure there are a lot of people. We just did draft profiles for the past 2 weeks.
Yeah.
I was excited to see what prospects Dallas could get at 26 and see him bring a young guy to camp and all of that. I'm sure there's some Mavs fans out there that are like, oh, we should have added somebody super young. I get that excitement, but to reiterate what you said, you're hoping a guy at 26, you're taking a swing no matter who it is at 26, saying, can you at least come in? I mean, we were talking and saying, can you come in and give us 8 minutes off the bench? Like, can you be better than Josh Green, who is the 8th or 9th man in the rotation? So now you're taking that pick and you're turning into Christian Wood, who is literally going to play and be your starting center and be better than all the other centers on your roster. Like, that in itself is a big win for Nico.
It is. Yeah, it's a big win. And so the initial reaction is, okay, well, what are the Mavs getting in Christian Wood? And what does he bring? Why are we excited about this? Why is Isaac saying that he's going to start right away? I think he is. He's a guy that can pick and roll like really well. Picks and rolls better than a lot of players in the NBA. He can also pick and pop too. Last 3 years, he's averaged just about 38% from three, and he takes about over four of them a game. And so he can shoot the three. The pick and roll and pick and pop stuff between him and Luka should be really good. His rolling is better than what Porzingis's was, and so I think that's a big positive.
Yeah, we've been talking over the years of like trying to merge two people. We've always tried to do it on this podcast. I'm like, man, what if we could merge Ryan Brokoff and Dorian Finney-Smith, and we'd have this great play.
And now it's just Dorian Finney-Smith.
Yeah, and now it's just Dorian. But we try to do this with two players. It feels like almost every year. Well, now the Mavs just did it with Dwight and Maxey, and saying, all right, I saw a tweet right after the trade, and it was like, hey, how many times during the playoffs was Dallas trying to do this? Like, all right, do we want to stretch five out there and Maxey who can pick and pop? Or do we want a roller and Dwight Powell? And it's like you almost had to pick. And now they don't really like those two guys are still on the team for now, but it's like now you have Christian Wood that can pick and pop like a Maxey, can pick and roll like a Dwight. We're just talking offense.
Right.
Just talking offense. But so that's a benefit too of he can do both of what both those guys can do.
Yeah, so if you bring on a guy like that, what it means is now all of a sudden Dwight and Maxey go to the bench spots, which is exactly what you want them to be. How long have we been talking about if they could just get a starting center that comes in and then all of a sudden Dwight is a backup five? He's a perfect backup five. Like a perfect backup five, because they're still going to have that option. He's still going to be out there with his hustle and his leadership and all the stuff that he brings, his really good pick and roll option. Him and Dinwiddie probably going to have some good moments in like this year. And so now you get a full offseason of that you can work on. Dwight moves to the bench. Christian Wood moves to the front and is the starting center for the Dallas Mavericks. And that's an upgrade.
Yeah. And it creates roster spots. I mean, you hardly ever see a 4-for-1, like hardly at all.
Right. That's true.
Because now Houston, like, they got to figure out their roster spots. Who are they going to waive? Do they waive all? They're going to be eating money basically just to get the 26 overall pick.
They get a trade exception. I think I saw somebody tweet that out.
Yeah. So in Dallas's case, you create your spot for Theo Pinson now for the end of the bench, because he can't come back as a two-way guy. And now you open up 3 other spots on your roster. So, hey, if you want to go add somebody to the exception over the next week, you can do that. You got a roster spot for that. If you make another trade out there to where you bring in a couple more guys, like there's a bunch of now you have a handful of roster spots now that we were looking at it saying, all right, well, Trey Burke's going to be coming back. Well, what's his like? All right, Marquise Chris. We kind of got these guys on, like we understood Boban. We'll have a moment for Boban, but Sterling Brown, Marquise Chris, Trey Burke, like I don't know what their role is going to be on the team next year. No. So now we kind of open those spots up. Great. I can't say it enough. Great move. There are other bigs out there that I think fit the roster better as far as like fit, like a Miles Turner or something like that you've been all about. But for this type of deal and for the value and what Dallas gave up, I thought it was a huge win for Nico in the front office.
And we could talk about all these hypotheticals of, could they get Miles Turner? What about DeAndre Ayton and all that? But some of these guys have to be available, and you have to have the right stuff to give up for them. It has to be the right situation, right? This Christian Wood just happened to be the right situation for the Mavericks. And so what if
for that cost?
What if the Pacers were not going to give up Miles Turner for like anything? Then all of a sudden you're like, okay, well, that's not an option anymore. We can talk about it all we want and say, hey, that's the ideal guy. Okay, well, he's not available. So he's just not available. They're not going to trade it. But for what the Mavericks gave up to get a guy like that,
I got an incredible analogy for you. So my wife and I, we have 2 toddlers. We've been wanting to get a 3rd row SUV for a while.
Wow, you said third, and I was like, oh boy, here we go.
third row. And we're like, all right, trying to save up some money. We're like, let's try to shop around a little bit. But we didn't know when we were ready to buy. We were back home visiting some family. We saw a family friend that owns a car lot. We were just talking to him one day. He's like, hey, I got this 3rd row car that I will give you a great deal on for different reasons. Ended up being like, hey, this wasn't actually what we were like wanting. It wasn't the timing of what we were wanting, But for the cost and for the deal, we talked about it one night and said, hey, we can't pass this up. Like, this is theoretically what we want. It wasn't exactly what we want, but it's what we want. And for a cheap cost, this is a deal we can't pass up. So there's your analogy. I feel like, the Mavs just got their third row car with a lot of toddlers.
Coming up, this is a risk for the Dallas Mavericks. It is. It's a risk in multiple ways. We've talked about the contract reasons. We've talked about how this deal, asset-wise, is a win. But it still is a risk for the Mavericks. We'll talk about that and more coming up. But before we do, let me tell you about Built Bar. It's a protein bar. Tastes like a candy bar. Got one right here. I got one right here. The Puffs.
I got mine in the mail.
The Puffs. You got the Mud Pie Puffs?
Yeah.
Those are good. If you're listening right now, they're going to be available tomorrow or today. They have a countdown on the website right now. Those are really good. I love those Mud Pie Puffs. I also love these brownie batter puffs. They're delicious. 140 calories, 17 grams of protein, only 7 grams of sugar in a bar covered in 100% chocolate. They're great. They're filled with marshmallow. The puffs are awesome. Check out the regular Built Bars as well. Use the promo code LOCKED15 to get 15% off your entire order. It's built.com. Built or nothing. The ultimate mock draft starts tomorrow or today, June 16th, wherever you are. If I finished editing it and posted it, then that means it's available day one. Picks 1 through 6. Our NBA local hosts like us make the picks. And oh man, we made a pick in this draft and we made a trade. And now this pick is gone. But we'll release it the way it was. So there you go. Go check out the ultimate NBA mock draft wherever you get your podcast. All right, Isaac Harris. The Mavs trade for Christian Wood. Now, I don't know if we gave the exact trade. They gave up the 26th pick. They gave up Boban, Trey Burke, Sterling Brown, and Marquise Chris. All these expiring contracts, the end of the bench guys that they weren't going to use next year, basically to fill salary. But this is a risk for the Mavericks. This is a risk in multiple ways. Now, one, Christian Wood's $14 million expiring contract this year. This is a contract year for Christian Wood. That's going to matter in a minute when I talk about him. It's a risk that, hey, you gave up the 26th pick. You could have gotten a guy that was cost effective, that was cost controlled with that rookie deal, could have eventually played in the rotation and been a really, really good player for the Mavericks. But it's a risk to take somebody at the 26th pick. Now they get somebody that we know is going to come in and be good for the Mavericks, but he could leave in a year. At the end of the season, if it doesn't go well, he could leave for nothing, and then the Mavericks lose him. And then all of a sudden you lost that asset that the Mavericks don't have a ton of because they still owe one next year to the New York Knicks for the Porzingis trade. And so in that sense, I think it's a risk for the Mavericks.
It's a risk, but it's a small risk. Like it's a risk, yes, but
asset wise,
because you have a cheap guy under contract. But I think it would be higher up the risk ladder if Christian Wood was making $20 million a year for the next 4 years. Or hey,
$40 million for the next 4 years, like Gobert.
Yeah, or Maxey was in the deal, or a future protected first was in the deal. I saw Bill Simmons tweet out immediately and was like, "Is this all Dallas is giving up? Really? They're just getting Christian." But like, if it's that, then I'm like, all right, you are risking something for an expiring pick. But just the 26th overall pick, it's still a risk, but it's not a huge risk.
Now, here's the part where it's an even bigger risk, right? I agree with you on that part. It's not a huge risk to give up the 26th pick. It is somewhat of a risk, but it's a bigger risk that Christian Wood has not. He's bounced around because of different reasons. He was on the Mavericks Summer League team in 2017 with the Orlando Mavericks, if you remember that team, with like Ding Ying-Yuhan and Jameel Warney and like guys like that went and they won the Summer League. Jonathan Motley, Dwight Bikes, Brandon Ashley, they went and did that. But it's a risk because Christian Wood has had some attitude issues in Houston. Christian Wood had some issues where I texted Jackson Gatlin as soon as this trade happened, host of Locked On Rockets. I said, hey, Christian Wood has had some issues, right? And he's like, yeah. It's like you watch him for 82 games and you just see it. You just see he wasn't bought in. He just didn't want to play here. And he quit on the Rockets. New Year's Day, there was a game against the Denver Nuggets, and he didn't come back in the game. Like, he didn't want to come back in the game because of some issues. There was some blow-ups in the locker room, things like that. He's had an attitude issue. And coming onto this team, the biggest thing that the Mavericks had in their favor this past year, the reason why that Jason Kidd had this team running on all cylinders the way that they were the second half of the year, is because everybody was bought in. Everybody was bought in on their role, knew what their role is, fell into line, knew exactly where they stood. And Christian Wood brings a little bit of an outlier there, and we're gonna see how it works and see if he can come in, and if Jason Kidd can convince him. It's gonna be a good coaching test for Jason Kidd and this staff to see if he can convince Christian Wood, this is your role. You're not going to get the post-ups and stuff that you want. You're not going to get the 20 shots a game that you may want. You're not going to get the featured in the offense type role necessarily. He's going to get what Jason Kidd is going to assign him to, and it's going to be interesting to see how Christian Wood buys into that, especially in a contract year. Especially in a contract year where the guy has bounced around. He's 26 years old. It's not like he's 22 or 23 and there's a bunch of years in front of him. This may be the last time for him to cash in big. And so is he going to want to, all right, I'll take one for the team. I'll play my team role. My numbers will suffer a little bit but the team will play really well. Maybe Jason Kidd talks him into it the way that he talked, Jalen Brunson into it. Now, Jalen Brunson was probably easier to talk into playing his team role and doing that this past year and getting paid. But what's going to happen with Christian Wood? That's the part I think that is a big risk for the Mavericks.
This is his 7th team in 6 years. So
and most of it is because he wasn't necessarily that great coming into the NBA, right? He's bouncing around summer league teams and different contracts and things like that. So it's not like he's just been a problem everywhere. But.
Yeah, and he hasn't played one of those teams is the Pelicans. He played 8 games. One of those teams was Milwaukee. He played 13 games. But he's suited up for Philly, Charlotte, Milwaukee, New Orleans, Detroit. He had a decent season in Detroit. Then he had that big year, his first year in Houston, when he went over to Houston, played with James Harden, had some go watch some James Harden, Christian Wood pick and roll stuff. There's some really cool moments. He has some good numbers that year. He averaged 21 points last year. Last year. Trying to figure out if we're still calling this year.
I know, right? The 2021 season.
Yeah. He averaged a 21 and 10 basically in that season, shot 37% from 3. And then this past year, was basically it feels like he had a down year this past year and he still averaged 18 and 10 and shot 40% from 3. So it's like, all right. But so there is a little bit of, all right, well, why is this dude 6'10", 6'11", and hasn't really caught on somewhere? Why is Houston just trading him and just giving up on him? I know they got young guys, and they're probably going to get, Chet, Jabari, Paolo, one of those 3 guys in the draft too. So, there is some question marks. That he's not the best defender in the world. He's not the best, when he gets switched off. He's not the best, anchor the paint on defense type of guy. But will the contract year pull the best out of him on defense? I don't know. Maybe. We'll see. My thing about his defense is, and I was talking to Jackson Gatlin about this weeks ago. We talked about him. We talked about Christian Wood as a center option for the Mavericks, and I wasn't super sold on him. I wasn't like, hey, this is my guy. Let's go after Christian Wood. He should be available, and let's do it, because he's not a good rim protector. He's not. That's not a thing that he's done in the NBA. What he is good at is, what Jackson told me, was he's good at stepping out and guarding on switches. He can do that. He can hold his own on switches. He's really mobile. He's got good feet. He can stay in front of a guy. And I think that is what probably really attracted the Mavericks to him, is because they're going to be able to keep their switching defense. We talked all about, okay, well, if they bring in a guy like Gobert, or if they bring in a guy like, Steven Adams, or if they bring in a guy like some of these centers, these plotting centers where they can't switch, do all of a sudden they go back to, okay, we're playing one defensive style when this center is in, and another, or Mitchell Robinson or whoever, a one defensive style when that guy is in, and another defensive style when we go small and do our switching thing that really worked for us to get to the Western Conference Finals this past year. With Christian Wood, you can keep that. And you can play Maxey next to him. You can keep the switching. You can play Maxey next to him. You could probably play Dwight Powell next to him too, because of Christian Wood's shooting. There's options for the Mavericks here now. And that's what you want in a playoff series, is to have options and to be able to do these things and to be able to switch on defense. Because that's what is happening right now in the finals. Look at the centers that are playing really well in the finals. We talked about finals lessons a couple days ago. You need these dynamic, these here we go.
These dynamic centers, and Christian Wood can be that guy. We haven't seen him play. We also haven't seen him play in a really good defensive system either. He's played for the Rockets the last 2 years. He played for Detroit. He played for the Pelicans for 8 games, and he's kind of bounced around before that. So is this one where he can come in, buy into the defensive system, and the defensive system raises him up a little bit more because he can still switch, and he has that ability.
Have we seen him on a good team?
That's what I'm saying. We haven't. I mean, he was on Milwaukee for 13 games in 2019. Was that team really good? Yeah, they won 60 games, but
he only just 13 games.
He only played 13 games, so.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts on his team?
No, I mean,
professional podcasters, Nick and Isaac here.
We just got to see it in action. I mean, that's the only thing. And so, but once again, to circle back to it, you take the swing on it.
Yeah.
Like, I don't even want to say swing. Like, I don't even think it's that big of a swing. Like I said, I don't think it's that big of a risk to give up the 26th pick because you're getting a guy who's going to be in your rotation. And now coming up next, let's talk about the ceiling of this team. Does it change it? Does it change it for the playoffs now that you add a legit starting? I say legit. I clearly defined starting center to the team.
Talk about that coming up. But before we do, boom shakalaka, we have big news. The one and only NBA Jam is back. Arcade 1UP, the leader in at-home retro arcade games, is not only bringing back the best game ever, NBA Jam, they've made it bigger and better than ever with a Shaq edition. You guys have seen my signed Shaq magazine back there. Shaq was my guy when I was a kid. Loved Shaq so much. Now you can have an NBA Jam Shaq edition in your house, like the actual stand-up arcade console you'd see at an arcade. You can get that in your house, and it's not going to cost you thousands and thousands of dollars. One of the first sports games to ever feature real and digitized NBA licensed teams. No fouls, no free throws, no quarters required. You can get NBA Jam. You can also get classics like Golden Tee, Mortal Kombat, and many others starting at just $399. Go to Arcade 1UP, the number one, arcade1up.com/lockedon, and you can enter for a chance to win the NBA Jam Shaq edition. They're going to give away 3 of them to Locked On listeners. So go to arcade1up.com, arcade1up.com/lockedon, and you can enter your email, and they'll enter you a chance to win the NBA Jam Shaq edition. You got till July 8th. Don't wait. Do it now. Don't miss out. Enter today. Boom, shakalaka, NBA Jam could be in your house. All right, Isaac Harris, we've been talking about the Christian Wood trade. Dallas Mavericks trade for Christian Wood. We talked about the reaction. We think it's a win for the Mavericks as far as asset management. We think it's a win as far as improving the roster. We think it's a win in a lot of different ways. We think it's also a risk. It's a risk for the Mavericks to bring him in because of some attitude issues. He's not necessarily the incredible defender that the Mavericks would probably want. So now the question is, did Dallas's ceiling change?
Oh, I thought you were going to continue with that. I think it.
I dropped it off to you like I handed it to you like a running back. I was like,
I was watching your mouth. I was like, oh, here he's going to keep going. But I think it did a little bit. I think they wanted to improve the center spot, and they did. So if you just want to use the blanket statement of that, I also think this could be an incomplete roster right now. I think there could be some potential more moves coming over the coming weeks, and let's see how that shakes out. Because, yeah, I think it would do us good to wait a few weeks, wait a week into free agency, see how it shakes out and everything. But I mean, you just look at money wise and stuff. Like they still have the exception. Like they could still use that on draft night. They could still entertain, taking somebody into that and picking up a 2nd round pick. Like, it wouldn't shock me at all, especially now that they have, roster spots. Like, look at the rotation in the playoffs: Reggie Doran, Luka, Jalen Brunson, Dwight Powell, Maxey, Spencer Dinwiddie, Christian Wood, like Josh, like these guys are still here. So now you just cleaned out the bottom of the roster. So now it's like, how do you want to fill out the rest of the team? Like Theo, put Theo in there. Do you want to trade into
Tim Hardaway?
Yeah, Tim Hardaway. I forgot about Tim Hardaway. So there you go. I should have said that at the very beginning. You're adding Christian Wood and Tim Hardaway to this Western Conference Finals team, and it's like for nothing. I mean, for lack of like, you know what I mean? Like nothing, no sacrifice as far as you're not losing anybody in the rotation. You're taking the exact same team rotation that got you to the Western Conference Finals, 3 wins away from the finals, and you're adding Christian Wood and Tim Hardaway Jr. to that. So whether you don't touch anything now, you're like, that's your selling point going into training camp. But I don't think they're done. I still think they're going to tinker here and there. But that alone right there is, wow. All right. We're already at this spot.
Yeah. Like you took a step forward. The Mavs took a step forward. I think they took a step forward. They got a better center than they had before. A guy that can play, guy that can hit the 3, guy that can roll really well, can step out and defend. He's not going to defend the rim as well as you'd hope, but maybe putting him in a system will help that. And so now all of a sudden you're taking a step forward. You got your starters. I think Christian Wood starts right away. Yeah. I think they still keep the the two wings. I think they still keep Dorian and Reggie, and they probably keep Luka and Brunson. That's probably your starting lineup, right?
For now, yeah.
And then all of a sudden, off the bench now, you have Dinwiddie, Tim Hardaway Jr., you have Dwight, you have Maxey, and you have Josh Green and Frank probably, and Theo.
Yeah, and you still have your mid-level, your tax mid-level.
Yep.
You still have the exception if you want to use that.
Yep.
You still have vet mins. Now you're a team that is going to be good. Like you could be one of those teams now. You're not going to win the Miami Lakers battle for vet mins.
But Isaac, Nico promised us
Dallas is going to get a seat at the table.
And so now with open roster spots, this is Nico's time to shine. This is Nico's time for actually these relationships with players that have probably been in the league for a long time to try and convince one of them, hopefully a wing, hopefully like a good wing, to come to the Mavericks, because that is definitely something they still need. They still need that guy. We talked about two needs the Mavs need. They need a dynamic center. Did they get it? They probably got it today. And then they still need another wing. That's still something they need.
And this is I said this a while ago, but this is when you call up some teams in the second round and say, look across their rosters, look at somebody that they have that on their team that they're just trying to dump to try to clear up a little bit more salary cap, and they have multiple seconds, whatever it is, and say, hey, we'll take that player into our exception if you just give us our second. And now you're adding another player. Now you get a second round pick. And it's like there's always ways for them to move into the draft. So selfishly, I would love for them to add somebody else on draft night so we can talk about them from a content angle.
Just add anybody. Just add one person every day for the rest of the offseason for us.
But you have Luka. You made the Western Conference Finals, and I think your biggest objective going forward is keep moving forward. Keep taking tiny steps forwards. Sometimes it's a big step forward of trying to, consolidate, make a big swing at a, bigger player or something like that. This is one of those moves where it's not a grand slam. It's not some giant leap to we just made this huge leap forward, but you move forward. You took a step forward. You didn't move backwards. And I think that's the important part. And you didn't sacrifice a ton in the process. You didn't sacrifice any future flexibility either. So I think it's a win across the board, just not like, hey, grand slam win.
Yeah, it's probably like a double if you're going to do the baseball analogy. To me, I think it's a double because it's good for asset management. It's good for improving the roster without giving up anything. In this trade, like usually you say in trades, so you have to give up something good in order to get something back. You were giving up the 26th pick, which is a chance that one of these guys works out. Just go look at the past 26th pick. It's hard to get a guy that actually works. So so they take a step forward. Now we have to see what else they do because there's some more moves to be had, like you said. What are some other ramifications of this trade that we can talk about? Should we go to our guy now?
Yeah, it's time.
Boban. The Mavericks could get Boban back. I don't want to. It's the hope that kills you, Ted Lasso. Like I know it's the hope that kills you. But according to Mark Stein, and this is just true for the CBA, if the Rockets trade Boban to someone else, and then Boban gets waived or bought out or whatever from that team, then the Mavericks can bring him back in. If the Rockets just waive Boban, then the Mavericks have to wait a calendar year to sign him back.
So Houston, you need to trade him somewhere.
Houston, I wouldn't be surprised if Nico put that in we'll agree to this trade. We'll send you this 26 pick that you guys want. We'll take Christian Wood off your hands because I know he's been an issue for you. We'll send you all these guys. We'll send you Boban. But you have to send Boban somewhere else. You have to help us and trade Boban so we can get Boban back. Because Boban was doing things for the Mavericks today. Boban was at the Wings game today taking a picture with Satu Sabali. Boban was doing Dallas Mavericks things this week.
I know his camp thing, he's at the camper thing that just blocking kids' shots. And we all know how much we love Boban. We know how close he is to Luka.
I'm going to use this until we can't use it anymore.
Yeah. So it's genuinely when I saw his name pop up, I was
upset. You could
legitimately
go listen to Locked On NBA where I learned about this live and I was upset about Boban.
And Luka wants to win. I feel like people are going to ask that question too. How pissed is Luka? He's not happy because he's losing, a friend to Boban. but he wants to win more than anything. If you're gonna tell Luka, hey, pick a ring or you get to play with your best buddies. Now, Luka might pick me now. Now, Luka will pick the ring, and it's like this is the sad part of the business sometimes. So let's cross our fingers. Hopefully he gets traded, bought out, comes back to Dallas somehow, and it's not the last of Boban. Has anyone checked on Derek Harper?
His guy Trey Burke is now gone.
Trey moving on. Marquise Chris, Chris Haynes tweeted out that he had knee surgery recently, so he's going to be rehabbing for a couple months and stuff. He seemed like a great guy too. I mean, they all did. Sterling Brown. It was really unfortunate Sterling didn't work out more than what he did. I know
he could have been that third wing, man. I was so hopeful for him when he got signed.
Yeah, so I think the question for Houston is how many of these guys you actually keep. Are they going to try
maybe Chris and that's it, but.
Yeah, so I don't know how many people, how many of them
didn't Sterling Brown just play for them?
Yeah, he was on there. Yeah, he was on. Marquise Chris played for the Rockets too at some point.
Sterling Brown was on the Rockets last year. Tim McMahon just tweeted out, Mavs priorities now going into free agency. Re-sign Jalen Brunson, add a wing who could be part of the playoff rotation, re-sign Theo Pinson.
Theo Pinson's part of the priorities. Let's go.
He should be. Honestly, he should be. I think we can talk about this a lot. I think what he brought culture-wise, chemistry-wise, this Mavericks team mattered a whole lot to the Mavs.
Yeah, no.
One of the reasons why we brought him on the pod, we wanted him on the pod. Like we brought him on twice because we thought that he had a lot to say, and everybody thinks he has a lot to say.
Yeah, Bobby Marks tweeted out too. This is a good point to add on this. That this trade can't be completed until draft night happens. So because of the Stepien rule, they can't really trade this pick. So they got to take the pick. This is gonna be one of those things that whoever they take at 26 is gonna be wearing a Mavs hat, and we can get the screenshots while we can.
So the Stepien rule says that you can't trade picks in consecutive years. So the Mavs can't trade this pick and then next year's pick. They already owe the 2023 pick to the Knicks for the Porzingis trade, and so they have to wait until, and they have to do the Trey Young Luka thing, where the Mavs will select a player at 26, but it will be the Rockets player. The Rockets will tell them which player they want them to select, and then the trade will go through on draft night. So you won't see like a Christian Wood introductory press conference or anything probably until after the draft, and so so you won't hear from him or anything like that. So that'll be interesting, but. That's the trade. We'll break it down probably all the rest of the offseason. This is a big deal for the Dallas Mavericks. So we'll break down some of that. We'll bring on Jackson Gatlin from Locked On Rockets to talk about what this means for the Mavericks and what he's going to bring to the Mavs. And so we'll talk all about that. Stick with us and go check out Locked On NBA Big Board. Great stuff from Rafael Barlow. We have an episode that I'll probably just post just because we talked about some draft stuff as a bonus on YouTube. So you can go check that out. We had a part 2 with him that was supposed to go today, but I'll do it as a bonus or something. So go check that out. And the ultimate NBA mock draft. Check it out wherever you get your podcast. Guys, thanks so much for listening to Locked On Mavs.
Peace out.
Boom!